The tree, not
everybody for being here today. I'm Marilyn Redmond. And this is a little different for me. I'm usually a very well-planned person, and I have handouts and all kinds of things. I do have a few brochure things with me, but usually when I do a workshop, and I've been doing them at Seabect now since 1995, and wasn't going to do one this year because I'm learning to not be so stressed out.
That's hard to do sometimes.
And he said, well, you don't have to do one this year. And I thought, oh, yeah, that would take some stress off. And then I didn't do my radio show yesterday, so I wouldn't have to prepare for that to be so stressed, and I could come and enjoy the week at Seabect and not have that pressure on me. And so I thought, well, this is really cool. And then as I was checking in, they said, are you going to do a workshop? And I said, well, I didn't plan on it. And they said, well, would you be open to helping us out if we need some? And I said, sure. So during the exchange last night of our little sign-in sheet things of people we were looking for with the same color brown eyes or whatever, I was informed that I was going to do a workshop. So this is extemporaneous and very much off the cuff, and I just have a couple notes here and not the formality. I normally would have put together a slideshow or whatever, and so we'll just kind of have a informal understanding, and definitely your questions are welcome. And those are from her tree. Oh. And those are cherries. So this is just kind of off the cuff, all right? So just kind of
stress.
Yeah, it's taking me off the stress scale, and I appreciate that. So anyway, I know a lot of people are interested in past life regression, and I just thought I'd give you some little history about how things came together in my life. I was raised in a family that went to church, and this kind of thing was not discussed. It was not acknowledged, and it was great denial. And so I'm sitting in the church pew as about a 7-year-old, and we're reading out of the hymnal, the creed, and it referred to the saints. Now, I came from a domestic violent childhood, okay? So I said to myself, I'd like to go back and be with the saints. They treat you nicer. Now, that was an indication, of course, that there's another life besides the one we have right now. But I just let that go as a child's comment, silly comment in my head, and, of course, never told anybody until a few years ago.
Not knowing anything about going back, you mean?
I was totally foreign. And then when I was in junior high school, I needed to write a report. They were assigned by the teacher, and we were doing Indian reports. And my friend had a World Book encyclopedia, and I was at his house getting the information I needed for Sacagawea. And while I'm reading out of the World Book, this voice said to me, you were Sacagawea.
You what?
The voice said I was Sacagawea. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. I discounted it again because nobody in my family would not be accepted, and therefore it was just a non-issue. So I didn't think anything about it. Since then, there's been lots of validation about that. Several masters have acknowledged that, and my personal experience at Fort Clatsop several times has definitely told me there's something there. So I have actually included it in one of my books, which is in the auction table. Paradigm Busters Reveal the Real You. I talk about past lives in that book. So if you're interested in some more information than what I can just share with you, but it does talk about past lives in there. So I ended up through my spiritual journey, through a prayer, I asked God to bring me to a group that did meditation when I was older and on my own and no longer married. And I was given the information to call a person who was in the Course of Miracles with me and talk with her for over coffee. And so I called her up, and we're having a chat, and the next thing I knew, she mentioned ARE. And I said, that's why we're here. What is ARE? And she had meetings at her house for Search for God. That's where I met him. Mm-hmm. And so I started going to Search for God. And they were having a program sponsoring the two Henrys. I don't know if any of you saw that program. It was probably 20 years ago now. They were coming to Seattle. Henry Reed and Henry Bolduc were the two Henrys. and they put a program on in Seattle. And I didn't know who the two Henrys were. I didn't know anything. I was new in ARE at the time, and I wanted to go to the program. So there I am sitting in the audience and enjoying the program immensely. And the Henry Bolduc said, well, I'm having a class for past life regression in Virginia, and I want to invite everybody to come and be part of the class. And I'm just sitting there, and I talk to Spirit a lot, so don't think it's strange. and I'm told, you get up and get in line. So I says, what's that about? I says, I don't even know what a past life is. The voice said, go and get in line. So I got in line. You know, in those days I was still very obedient from my childhood, okay? I did what I was told. So I got in line, and I'm standing in line saying to myself, I don't know what a past life is. And the voice said, well, you're going to sign up for the class. And I says, well, how am I going to get there? And they said, you have free frequent flyer miles. That's how you're going to get there. So I said, the room is going to cost some money. They said, you can sign up with another woman and share the rent the price, you know, so it doesn't have to be the whole price of a room. And the next thing I knew, it was my turn in front of Henry to sign up. So it was a $90 deposit. I signed up and ended up in Virginia at a little town north of Virginia Beach, where he taught the class in a hotel at a Holiday Inn. And that was the beginning of my learning about past lives. And I had some wonderful experiences while I was taking the class. Spiritual talents that I didn't even know I had came out. This was a room of about 40 people, like we're sitting only wall to wall in a bigger room, and very high energy. And I started seeing everybody in the room, not just the physical people. Next to everybody in the room were spiritual entities or personal friends who had passed over. And I could just see every one of them, you know, and the room was filled. And,
were they all positive, or?
Yes. But the energy was so high it would have to be positive. So at one point I was in the restroom, and the one lady was in there, and I says, oh, who's standing next to you? And I described the person, and she says, that's my mother. You know? And I says, well, she has a message for you. So I gave her the message, and she went running into everybody in the class and said, I just got this wonderful message to da-da-da. So then, of course, people were coming up to me, and I came out of the closet during that class. And it wasn't just me knowing I could do this anymore. The whole room knew. And so during class breaks and whatever, I was helping other people wanting to talk with those passed over. And it was some pretty interesting stories happened. And I don't think I've ever heard anybody ever say this before, but it happened to me. On the way to one of our sessions, I had to go through this one particular room to get to the room we were in. And I actually elevated off the floor. And my feet were not on the, it's scary. If you want to have the experience, go to the aquarium at Newport in Oregon. Mm-hmm. They have a plastic tunnel that it's like you're walking inside the water and there's no floor. It's the same feeling, like there's nothing under you. And that was the experience. And I've never done it again, but that's when the energy's really high, these things can happen to you. So if you're taking classes or whatever, like I was in this case, don't be surprised if you're in this kind of a spiritual group and things start to happen to you. Some of the readings were fascinating. I gave the people at the time. And we were practicing on each other. So I ended up learning a lot about my different past lives. And what I know today is I'm really grateful. The more past lives I know about, the better I understand what's going on today. Because one of the things Henry had us do, we had a sheet where you did past lives and you charted the characteristics of the different past lives, and you could start to see a pattern in your life of when you were doing this situation and it followed through in another life and how you can progress and so forth. So I know today that in my case I have had at least 4 past lives in domestic violence, and this is the lifetime I was to heal it. and get the answers for that. And other past lives, I was an artist. In my books, I've illustrated all my own books. And some past lives, in those cases, were not violent. They were very, actually, creative. I painted the faces for a famous artist. In fact, he always got the glory, but I painted all the faces of his portraits. And, so various past lives can give you inklings of your talents, too. So if you don't, these people that are child prodigies, it's not their first lifetime. They've had years and experiences of many past lives to get to the point where they are today. And some of the paintings, there's a little gal who is on YouTube. I noticed this was on television years back, but it's on YouTube now, where she paints the picture of Jesus and other things that are just absolutely beautiful and no talent, but she just asked for the paints and the canvas and whatever and started doing these great, wonderful, wonderful paintings. Well, when I was 5 years old, I asked for paints, and I got an easel and paints for Christmas at the age of 5, and when the paper was all used up, I asked for more, and I never got more paper. My mother says we can't afford it. So it wasn't until I was on my own, divorced and down the pike, that I was able to buy my own supplies. And I do a lot of artwork today. I see angels, obviously. And, well, I've had a lot of angel experiences. I just shared on one of my radio shows all my angel, or not all of my angel experiences. I'm going to put them in a book because I had too many to share even in an hour. So, these talents that you have are often developed through many lifetimes. And you can have indications of those along the way. And so I know that in past lifetimes I had a lot of musical talents and abilities. And some of that showed up in this lifetime. I was a flute and piccolo player and always sat first chair, always, played the contests and got excellence and whatever. So past lives are actually blooming in your life every day. And so things that come up in your life, and don't discount it, actually, I have an inquisitive mind. I really do. And so I'm always checking things out. And the more I've checked out in my past life situations has helped me, in my case, to get some understanding and purpose of what I'm about and how it's come together. I know today we wrote our own scripts before we came in. And so if you're having a tough time in this lifetime, you brought it on into this lifetime to heal. And that's what we're here for in this lifetime. Things are changing energetically if you're aware of the atmosphere around us, the sun flares, the various equinoxes and so forth. A lot of energy changes are going on. This is my last lifetime in third dimension, I know today. In fact, I basically moved beyond. And we can do that with past lives. You can heal your past if you have past situations to heal, which we all do, is why we're here. They're all not always 100% karmic, because you probably have some problems with some relationships currently, or working on some anyway. I still got one to work on. But we can heal those through past life regression, or if it's a current problem that you're dealing with, I just put you into a regular regression. Because I went back to Henry's class twice in Virginia for training, and that made me qualify so I could become an international board certified past life regressionist. So I'm internationally board certified, and I've also had quite a few courses in hypnotherapy, which is basically the same thing, just another term. And I'm also on the board of American Hypnotherapists. So I have some qualifications to go along with this, so I am certified. The past life regressions help us to get in touch with those situations that still need to be healed, and sometimes you're not aware of what the situation is. And so it's a 2-hour process to put you into an altered state where you can get in touch with that energy. It's not really a life. People will say, I haven't lived all those lives. Well, actually, there's just one big life. It's like a pot of soup, And if we come in and out, in and out, in and out, and that energy from those different lives is part of our wholeness, our soul. And Cayce was, with his readings, really opened the door to a lot of understanding that if we came in to this planet And we experimented, if you know about the Cayce readings, experimented with animals and other union with other situations and creativity, and got ourselves in all kinds of messes and needed to go back to being human form. And of course, Temple Beautiful and the other temple that helped people to come back to what we needed to cut off the extra tail or whatever from whatever animal we might have ended with. All those situations are still part of our energy if we haven't healed it. So those kind of situations need to be brought back into the oneness, the source, into the unity of consciousness that we all are and were created with. So past lives is a way of bringing your soul back to wholeness. And it's a way of identifying that energy. Cayce says you have to go through every vibration to restore your soul back to the source. Now, a lot of people are in resistance about some of the things that might have happened to them in the past. And some things we weren't. Cayce also said, you were rich and you were poor, you were a thief and you were a philanthropist, and you were we've gone through every possible experience in our energies. That's called balance. So, if you became a victim, maybe you were the aggressor in another life. I must have been a really good aggressor. I was a good victim in this life. So, I'm balancing out my energy and learning how to restore it into a healthy resolution. And that's what past lives can do, is bring it to the surface, and you can be involved with the person or the situations that are still in that energy of your consciousness, but you're not aware of it. If we came to this planet and had every past life available to us, we would be so distracted from we couldn't manage to focus through our life. We needed a narrower vision of why we were here. So you've only been aware, and they call it the veil, you've only been aware of a certain part of your life. It's actually extremely much more extended than what you might understand or have understood in the past, before you got to Cayce anyway. And so we're really bringing all those negative energies into a harmony in a way that is going to be productive, and that allows our soul and spirit to rise up into the oneness of fifth dimension, so that we can actually live in harmony. The 1,000 years of peace is on its way, and that's what we're working towards, being part of that. So, but you have a choice to stay in third dimension and work through more difficulties. Some of us, you people in the room, I'm sure, wouldn't be sitting here, you're old souls. So you're probably familiar with everything I'm saying. And please just listen anyway. So new souls will probably be coming back, they will be coming back to a third dimensional existence until they have gone through all the vibrations of healing and coming into healing all that parts of their soul energy. So if you are an old soul, and some of this sounds familiar, some of you you've been in touch with, you've been working on and whatever, you're probably on the final stages of healing what needed to be healed so that you are a whole person. We are all created as a whole person, a Holy Spirit. We've gone through these situations which splintered our soul. So the pain is the separation from God. So everything I do is to help bring you back to that connection, that source that you splintered from over whatever situations you were involved with, which were not very nice. You put it that way. Maybe you were a robber in another lifetime, or whatever, killer or whatever. All the people that are in prison right now, it just boggles my mind. I'm sure part of it is that they're balancing out the part, when there was the opposition and they played the other side of the fence. So it's a matter of saying, gee, what did I do? It still needs to be worked on. And so when I'm sending out to other people, I look and see, okay, what's going on with me, because that's what I'm sending out. I'm not very happy with some of my past lives, to be truthful. Never ever dawned on me that when my half-sister stole my inheritance from my mother, and of course I was not very happy about that. And I really was trying to figure out the best way to solve that situation. And he says, don't sue her, don't sue her. Well, everybody is kind of sue crazy nowadays, you know. And I prayed about it, of course. And I did, for another reason, needed to see my lawyer at that point. So I asked him about, do I have grounds to even bring a case? And he says, yes, you do have grounds. They did it illegally. And explained to me that you cannot take money out of a mentally ill person's account for other reasons and whatever. So anyway, they had done it illegally. So I had grounds. And he kept saying, don't sue her, don't sue her. And I'm finding out that spiritual people do not sue other people because it's part of the script. If I had taken her to court, I would have continued the tit for the tat that was going on with us. And by not being aggressive and calling her to task for it, I didn't continue the game. And today we are on speaking terms. And after she stole the money, she says, I never want to see you again. And she's the one that actually, of course, I prayed a lot for her. You pray for your enemies, right? But she's the one that connected with me and wanted to get together so that we could have a congenial, it's not what I'd call buddy-buddy, but it's a congenial relationship today. In fact, my birthday's this month, and she says, let's go, her birthday is too, let's go out to lunch. That wouldn't have happened a few years ago. But what I found out about myself is ugly. What I had done to her in like 1,000 years ago. I was a man at that point, and she was in my harem, and she kept running away. So I had her legs cut off, and she would get around on a little platform with wheels. That's how she got around. So in this lifetime, she stole my money. that was her way to get back at me. When I prayed about it, God said, you got off easy. But that balanced it because I didn't reciprocate back. And so, and in praying for, we've come to being agreeable with each other and much better attitudes. So you see, it's not always a happy situation when you find yourself in these past lives. But they're necessary. Every time you release a negative and forgive it and let it go, see, a balance is like this, and every time you let go of the negative, then it can come back up to be in balance. It drains it, it lowers it. The justice scale isn't in balance. So every time you let go of those things out of balance, you come back into being in justice. So that's really, past lives help us to do that. Some people are afraid of past lives, and I've heard people say, I don't want to even talk about it, that's bunk. It's really not a scary process because you people sitting in here probably meditate I don't know about you, but I meditate every day, and it's an altered state, and that's what hypnosis is an altered state. Every time in fact, John's mentioned it, and we talked about it just a few minutes ago. When you wake up in the morning, you're in an altered state until you put your feet on the ground. And John said, before you empty your bladder. When you're in that awakening state, that's an altered state. That's meditative state or a hypnosis state, a reflective state. It bypasses the ego. So all you're doing in hypnosis is addressing your consciousness without the interference of the ego. And that's what a near-death experience is. I've had that too, and so I'm trying to understand that. It's these experiences that people can't explain are because if you take the ego away, it's all consciousness, and you can't explain consciousness because it's invisible. So what you're doing is putting words to energy, and that energy needs to be released. So it looked like in my material mind, it looked like I was cutting the legs off my sister. But it could have been, that's just the story your mind brings in to put words to the energy. You know, I just recently, in doing some healing on myself, found out why my son and I don't get along very well. And I shared that with somebody just the other day. And, you know, I was not a very nice person sometimes. And I always, you know, because of my history, I always wanted to look nice to everybody so you wouldn't hurt me because of the abuse I went through. But what we need to do in past lives is have integrity, clean out what's inside, so what you're sending out is this, you know, you see who you get. You know, what you see today is what you get from me. You know, I don't have to have a game or a mask or a way to masquerade as a good person when inside I'm not really that person I want you to think I am. So what it's done for me is it's given me a lot of clarity, but it's given me a lot of integrity. The more I know about myself, the better choices I can make in my life today. So when I know these things come along, and of course we all have to go through them, I have a choice today to do the right thing or to continue my old pattern. Now, if I'm going to continue with the habits I've learned and what our society teaches us to react from fear, and if I'm going to just keep going on like the news people say, or the experts, you know, say out there of how you should live your... I just love this 40s, 50s, 60s music, but now in the middle of the day, they've got this guy coming on, and he's giving all kinds of information of how to stay in third dimension, is what it amounts to. Statistically this, statistically, well, God doesn't work in statistics, you know, so it's all about not really growing spiritually. It's all that advice we get. Well, that's not what really is what we're here for, is we're here to clear out our energy, and it's not what you see. And so you have to live your life that's your path, and it might not be somebody who's an expert. They're coming from their head, and we're coming from our hearts when you're in past life. And it's all very much working with your soul, and it's not what Dr. So-and-so said, because that's a head trip. That's out of the books. This is coming from intuition, I guess would be maybe one of the best words. I always ask my angels and my guides and masters to come in and help me with whatever work I'm doing. In counseling one day, the lady was sitting there in regression, and I couldn't how am I supposed to proceed? You know, my mind kind of went blank, and I said, okay, what am I supposed to, I asked my angels, what am I supposed to do next? And they told me, mid-logic, perfect sense. Okay, I know exactly what you're saying, and I just followed suit, and off we went and took care of the situation. So this is coming from within us, and it's my heart coming to your heart in a healing way, so that you can feel like this energy's resolved, and you don't have to. It's motivating your life if you know it or not. So when you can heal that, you're going to find yourself handling certain things in your life differently than you might have handled them before. You know, I would like to think that I was a wonderful person, but you know, I was raised in an environment where it was very much a head trip, very negative. And that's what I gave my family, because that's all I knew. And today, because I've done this kind of work, even my daughter calls me, thanks, Mom, just needed to touch base. You know, she uses me for support, and she feels very safe to tell me anything today. That wasn't always the case. I become a different person because inside I'm not trying to be something I'm not, you know, and I'm not just spouting off what somebody else told me in a book. It's coming from within. It's coming from the God within. We all have God within us. And to access that is a beautiful part. It makes your life go into grace. So past lives actually bring you out of third dimension, and as you're going, fourth dimension is really just a transition into God consciousness. So as you're going through that growing stages, as we all are, things start to just fold into place. So it's interesting how one thing leads to another, and it just kind of falls together. So our lives get much easier. If you resist it, you're resisting being in that channel of love in your life. Then that's what we came to be, is to be able to hand that, you know, we're the arms and legs of God, you might say. So if it's blocked by past lives that haven't been healed, you're not changing anything. You're just reproducing it, recreating the old ways. And so this opens up new ways to handle your life in a way that's authentic and genuine and compassionate. So you can see that when people, we just had a question about somebody feeling hurt about the way someone was treating them, and I says, you know, what I've learned is those people are wounded and damaged people, and I don't see them as hurting me today. I send love and compassion to them so that they can heal themselves and feel comfortable enough to do it. So instead of me defending myself and going around, boo-hoo, they don't like me, or boo-hoo, they hurt me, or boo-hoo, they took my money, or whatever. You know, my half-sister was definitely damaged in this situation. My mother was mentally ill, that we had the same mother. So she had a mentally ill mother who was very abusive too. So she was acting out of survival just as much as I was growing up and acting out of survival in this life. And I can understand where she is today. So I can see life on a whole different perception than I did before. So we're in that altered state twice a day, every time we wake up in the morning and every time we go to sleep at night. And that's past life just puts you in that meditative space. It's not a big spooky thing. We just do actually a deeper meditation, I guess you'd call it in this term, than when you're doing your own meditations. I guide you into a deeper state so that you can actually access that energy. That when you're in a meditative state, in my case, some of my meditations go pretty deep, but most of mine are fairly high. And this puts me in touch with things I'm not normally getting in touch with myself. So what I'm really doing is just coaching you through it. And you then respond with what you see. So like if you smell certain smells or you see certain pictures in your mind, what you touch, the five senses play a lot in this. So you can, in fact, when flowers or cinnamon or whatever come into your senses in a regression, those are indications of old memories. And you pick up on those and can find answers through the five senses, picking up the hearing, what you might hear, or what you might see. So, the thing is that past lives for me has opened up a whole new perception of life. It's given me a bigger picture that we're all in this same soup trying to heal our souls. Our souls are really part of God. God consciousness is consciousnness, and that consciousness is what created us. So we have that consciousness of God. I channeled St. John, and the way he described it made it sense to me. I do channeling for groups, and he said, well, think of yourself as putting all the ingredients into a big bowl, and you're making cookies. And so you put in all the ingredients, and you stir them up, and now you're going to cook your cookies. So you put your baking sheet over here, and you scoop up a cookie dough, and you put it on the cookie sheet, and you have the same consciousness as what's in the cookie bowl. You're just individualized God consciousness. So every time you move and heal that part of your soul that needs to come into loving resolution. That's what we do in past lives. We bring it into loving resolution. It affects the consciousness of everybody. Every time you heal something, that's what the beautiful part of being a counselor and doing this kind of work is when somebody gets into that state where they've healed a part of their soul. And it's a feeling I cannot tell you, but it is absolutely phenomenal to be part of that. When I went to learn my learning of past lives, this one man was a retired minister. He was one of the supervisors of the class. And he came to me after the lady went running into the room. He came to me and says, I want to talk to somebody passed over. So I said, okay. So we got together, and I says, well, who's the gentleman that was, for some reason, some of these really stick in my mind. I says, who's the gentleman that was standing next to you with the striped brown shirt? He says, that's who I want to talk to. And so I told him what he wanted to know. But most people that talk to people passed over want to talk with relatives. So that surprised me that he wanted to talk to this friend. And so I said, well, don't you want to talk to your father? Oh, no, And his father appeared and dressed in black with this black blanket over him. And his father says, I don't want to talk to him either. So I cannot tell you people what happened, except I really did become a channel in that situation. And his father started saying something. I can't tell you what it was today. And he was responding to it. And he responded back to the father. And the next thing I know is the father's taken the black blanket off his head. And he's happy as a lark because he says, it was all a misunderstanding. And so the next day, this minister's running down the hall of the hotel to reach his wife. He says, you won't believe what I found. So, it's really interesting when you're in these spaces of working in the spirit, how much healing can come. Past life healing, or talking to past people passed over, or childhood regression and healing incidences from your childhood. All those kinds of things can be resolved in loving solutions. And the lessons we learn from them, that's our wisdom. That's when you go through it and experience it and come out on the other side. So, to resist it and not be open to it, the only one I discovered in my case is the only one I'm hurting is me. When I went for some extra healing for me just recently, and this guy says, do you trust me? And I said, yes. And so he helped me. And what I know today is, his comment was about some people wouldn't do this because, of their fear or whatever. He was thrilled to think that I would trust him. And why wouldn't I? I know this man had credentials. My spiritual teacher, Linda Schiller-Hanna, has worked with him extensively, and been very successful. So, it's a matter of trust. Are you willing to look at those parts of you that still need to be healed so you can be a whole soul and return to the rightful inheritance of your being born in the Spirit of God? So the more you know about yourself, the better choices you can make. And they are actually going to be choices that bring your life into a higher place of energy, higher consciousness, a place where you see the bigger picture more than you do now because you are open to it, and instead of hiding it or being hidden from you or in denial. These things open up ways of healing that are possible. When I was helping somebody, their family wouldn't go with them to 12-step healing at a treatment center, and said to me, will you go as part of my family, because my wife is in denial and she won't go, so will you go and participate? And one of the things they taught us is that there's like a window to your consciousness, and it has 4 panes, and you can look at yourself through 3 of the panes, but there's one pane you cannot see about yourself. So if you don't get extra help to see what you can't see about yourself, then that's not going to change. So that's the kind of help I do, is that 4th window of experience or information or whatever has to be resolved can be looked at and addressed. Because to do it on your own is not possible. There's just the way we're made up. We can see so much of ourselves, work on ourselves very diligently, but like when I asked this fellow to help me a few weeks ago, and it opened up something I didn't even know happened. And it answered a multitude of problems in my life between my son and me. So I finally got some answers I've been praying for ages, but I finally got some answers because I got some extra help. So it's just a way to help you even do a better job on yourself than you can do independently. We really didn't have enough time to do an actual regression because the chart said I had an hour for the workshop. So it would take longer. I've done group regressions before, and if we wanted to get together and do them, I'm all for anything that you're interested in. If you have some questions, I would be more than interested in answering them. Yes?
Just curious, as we're sitting here, do you see others around us? Do you is the vibration sort of like what you were
Explaining? Yes, I do. You all have an angel with you. Well, I know, but on the sheet she gave me an hour, so because this doesn't seem to be working, if you noticed.
It says you go to 6 o'clock.
Yeah, well,
Well, I have a workshop that I'm afraid I'd better leave for.
go ahead.
Because
That's why I think it's an hour, because they have some others planned. So that's why we can't go longer. But yeah, if I could leave a piece of paper, whatever, if people wanted to sign up, and we can maybe, if you're interested in a group or an individual session, no problem. I have some brochures.
If other people want to stay, I just need to leave so that I can set up to do my nonviolent communication workshop. So
I understand, and we're glad you were here.
well, thank you.
But you're finish saying what you were saying about your angel thing.
I'm gonna have to take her.
In the next sentence.
About angels being around everybody, yeah. If you want to know the truth, well, this is how I see it. I don't know. This is what I've learned, is that we are a consciousness, and when we come to Earth, we don't come alone. We only come with a part of our consciousness.
I was just trying to get out of everybody's way, that's all.
You're going between 2 chairs.
Okay, thanks.
No, you're
Sorry. I'm sorry for
No,
the interruption.
that's
standing in the
okay.
doorway now, around.
Well, I'm not leaving until my brother signs up.
He's with you.
He's with you.
Sorry, whatever.
Our consciousness comes. Oh, okay. Our consciousness comes in, not totally. And when you call it your higher self, that is part of you. That's the part that didn't come to the planet because you didn't need that part of you to go through the experience of this particular lifetime. And it stays on the other side. Now, that part of you also has angelic energy in it. It also has other... we give everything labels in the material world. It's hard sometimes to find words for some of this. Other energies are in your consciousness, and one of them easy to identify are angels. So you come actually with an entourage. If you're aware of it, you'll probably at times feel that you're not alone. I was painting, I see angels. So I paint angels, and one night I was painting, and I got this feeling. And I said, something feels different. It was Jesus. And I says, what happened? And he says, well, you've always put people in front of me to hang on to for your security. And now that you're divorced and on your own, they aren't there, and you could finally feel the energy of me. We're never alone. So, that energy's there, but whatever we're making a god of it or focusing on it or hanging on to for security or to protect us or whatever, those stand sometimes in the way of our being connected with that energy that is there for us to connect to, which, we pray. We're actually talking to our higher selves, our higher consciousness. And so those energies are around you. When you're here, they're accessible if you're open to communicating. And sometimes they do it in funny ways to get your attention. But yes, yes.
People are willing to stay this afternoon. Would you be willing to do it? Past life regression today?
Well, we wouldn't. It would take 2 hours or a little less, and I'm not sure this is really quite the environment. I'm not really against it. How many are interested to go into a very deep state and get in touch with? Oh, well, majority of you. Okay, well, if that's the case, I don't see why we can't. I'll just. What?
Another question is about your. I was curious how you think about animals and other living things, and how they have their process of reincarnation.
Well, they do reincarnate because my cat did it 3 times.
Well, my dog.
And she told me all about. Oh, my cat Angelica. My business is called Angelica's Gifts. Okay, it's named after her, and I also have an angel Angelica. And one night I was sitting by he loves my fireplace, by my fireplace reading with a cat in my lap, and it was one of those nice pleasant evenings. And I'd been talking to her with pictures, and she says, "Oh, forget the pictures, let's just communicate." Most people, a lot of cat people people that communicate with animals do it through pictures, but she says don't need to do that. So she started telling me how she was unhappy with me. Because when we were in Persia, and she was my cat in Persia, and she sat on this very fancy pillow. I was a princess in that life. And she sat in a very fancy pillow with tassels, and all the servants brought her the food. And she says, "You don't treat me like that." And I says, "And I'm not gonna." and then I found out that she'd been my cat when I was a little girl, 5 years old. And she was there because my mother couldn't love me, and my mother was mentally ill, and my dad was an alcoholic, and I was not nurtured as a child. So she was the love that I had at the time. That's the love that was in my life. And my stepdad got rid of that cat. Tells you what kind of man he was. I won't go into the details of that one. So she wanted to come back into my life when I got divorced because, again, I was on my own needing love. And I had a friend who was going to go hunting, and this cat showed up on his front porch. And he says, "I've been feeding it, but if I'm hunting, I can't feed the cat, and my neighbor's feeding my cat, but my cat and this cat don't get along." So it's not going to work to have this other cat around. Will you take it while I'm hunting? And I said, I've had it with cats. I'd had a bad experience with some cats, and I decided I'm not having any more cats. So I kept telling him no, and he brought it over in a box, and we took it to the vets to get shots, and I ended up with this cat. And to make a long story short, she started talking to me, and it turned out, she says, "That's the only way I could get back into your life is for Gary to bring this cat to you." And you got it dropped on your doorstep. So we were together again in this lifetime. And so, yeah, animals reincarnate.
Do they, reincarnate from a lower species or a lower form?
Well, the souls of animals are a little different than people. Now, Theosophy says you have been a rock mineral, first dimension, you grow into being plants, and then you grow into being animals. And there's a certain amount of truth in that, and I don't want to get into the technicalities of that, because we do free healing every Thursday afternoon in Milton if you're interested. He's a wonderful pranic healer, and I bring in St. John for the karma and emotional things that need to be resolved, and it's free for donation in Milton. And we had a lady show up who had been a horse. This was her first lifetime as a horse. So I know it's possible.
So she was a horse in a previous life, and now she's a person.
Mm-hmm. In fact, he even picked up her grandfather that had owned her as a horse. Oh, that's Paul was his name. That was my grandfather. And she knew what horse race she'd won as a horse.
She was hoping to. She had kind of like a ranch for horses, but it wasn't to be. I told her, I said, you're not going to be able to make a living with horses this year. In this life. Don't know why, but she just wasn't.
So there is, your soul does go through all stages of growth. So I was a mermaid. I know that today. So we go through different stages. Not everybody's privy and aware and into that today, but it's possible.
Trying all different things, like you said, to see the contrast and learn.
It was through our creative curiosity, yeah.
I was very. I
Yeah.
was looking out a window, and I saw this big bird come and land on a branch, and it went up and down, and I knew how it felt to land on a branch and go up and down. You know how branches will go up and down, and I said, yeah, been a bird.
Well, this person also had been a wild boar in the tundra, and when I found her in regression, she was scared to death because there was a pen of boars, and they were being raised for food by the Eskimos up there, and they never knew which one would be killed for food the next time. And she also found herself inside of a chrysalis as a butterfly ready to come out. That was a spooky one too, because she couldn't figure out for a while where she was and putting the pieces together, but she was ready to go into being a butterfly. So we do have other experiences. Any other questions?
Well, how does that fit in with the Bible?
All right, there's a marvelous book by Herbert Perrier called Why Jesus Taught Reincarnation. And because the Bible has been retranslated numerous times, there's over 100 different versions of the Bible, and it was adulterated in 455 AD at the Nicene Creed, and that's when they took out reincarnation. And Hugh, this is a story he tells. Hugh, do you want to just real quickly?
You can.
Hugh Lynn was in that conclave, the Council of Nicaea, and that's when the reincarnation was taken out of the Bible. He was part of the group that took it out of the Bible, and this reincarnation was for him to bring back. Reincarnation is part of our lives, and to help restore it to consciousness again.
Actually, what I'm talking about is animals reincarnate as people versus the Bible saying that God made man.
Well, you see, the Bible is really talking in allegorically, first of all, and the Bible was. My books are all channeled that are on the table in the auction. It says in the Bible, holy men of God spake as they were guided by the Holy Ghost. All books are really written through intuition. God is not a person, it's an energy. And through people, the books are written. So it's not a person wrote the Bible. It was through intuition, and it's been adulterated over the years. So take everything positive out of the Bible. It's terrific. The Bible is full of wisdom. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all things will come to you. That's exactly what this life is all about. So when we, first commandment, have only God on our focus, it will manifest, spirit will manifest into material form. But it's been distorted and changed and whatever. So we have to, the problem with churches is they cherry pick what's out of there. And the part that's the truth, I read a book by Holmes one time, and he started a church, and he said the 12 verses you'll never hear from the pulpit. And as I was reading the book, it was the things that you don't hear from the church pulpit, because they want you to have a certain mindset. So,
but the Bible never says. God said He was going to He's making people. Making man in His image.
That's right. We're spirit
but He never
too.
said that He was making animals in His image.
Well, a soul. There's
something missing.
There's different kinds of souls, and I didn't want to get into that. Okay, the consciousness has everything's energy, and there's different consciousness of soul. It's animals.
Yeah.
That's right. So it's hard to put in words. It's all energy at a different life is, if Tesla had it right, it's all energy in frequency and vibration, and we put limit it with words and semantics. So it's very hard to describe some of this.
I mean, I can understand that the evolution of the soul, or of the consciousness, into people. It's a theory, but there is nothing in the Bible about that.
Well, I've heard too that there's different vibrational frequencies, something like you're talking about, with like animals are on one vibration.
Right.
Elementals would be like fairies, and those would be on another level.
But it says God. Oh, pardon me.
So it's a different consciousness.
God made everything. It says in the Bible, God made everything, and it was good. Yes. So He made animals. He made everything.
Well, yeah, I believe He made animals, because He made I know He made everything.
Yeah. So if what I did want to say is that my website is Angelica's Gifts. I have a radio show every Tuesday afternoon on boldbravemedia.com, and it's a call-in question show. West Coast is 3 o'clock every afternoon on the internet. And I do I have a lot of videos on YouTube, some from Seabect and from prior years. And I have a blog, if you're interested, it's marilynredmondbooks.blog.spot.com. And so anyway, I'm easily accessible if you want to talk some more, but some people apparently want to do some past lives. So I think